After the college entrance examination, my school hunk boyfriend tricked me into going camping with him and his childhood sweetheart in a primeval forest in order to please her. Later, when a flash flood broke out, the childhood sweetheart pushed me into the flood just to make me retrieve her bag for her. After I died, in order to shirk responsibility, they told netizens that it was all my idea to come camping here. Once again, facing the impending flash flood, I smiled and said, "Since we're already here, we must have a great time. This time, it's your turn to taste what it's like to be swept away by the flood." "Luna, don't be so petty. It doesn't matter. Next time, I'll accompany you to the zoo again." As soon as I opened my eyes, I was back on the day when I met with misfortune in my previous life, the time when Ethan tricked me into coming to Yulong Mountain. Ethan was the school hunk in our school. After the college entrance examination, I naturally accepted his confession. However, I was just a tool he used to make his childhood sweetheart Vivian jealous. For our first date, we had originally agreed to go to the zoo to see pandas. But after getting in the car, Ethan asked me to close my eyes and rest. While I was asleep, he drove directly to Yulong Mountain, which was 80 kilometers away from the urban area. Yulong Mountain was an unexploited primeval forest. If there was danger, it would take the police at least 1 or 2 hours to drive here. Previously, when Vivian proposed to come camping in the valley of Yulong Mountain, I refused. It was too dangerous to take risks in such a no-man's land, but I didn't expect that Ethan would trick me into coming here directly. Later, when the flash flood broke out, Ethan let Vivian push me into the flood just to make me retrieve Vivian's bag for her. In my last memory, after being swept away by the flood, I soon hit the rocks and lost the strength to struggle. It wasn't until a week later that my body was found on the river beach downstream. My parents fainted on the spot when they identified my body. And Ethan and Vivian, fearing that my parents would cause trouble for them, chose to distort the facts online and told netizens that it was my idea to go camping and that I was reluctant to abandon my belongings when the flash flood came, which led to my death. There were a flood of negative comments about my death online. Good riddance. The little fairy finally got herself killed. Putting money before life. You really thought nature was your living room. Evolution is meant to eliminate such fools who waste social public resources. My parents, who already suffered a great blow from losing their child while they were still alive, soon died of depression after seeing those comments online. Whenever I thought of these, I couldn't wait to expose the true faces of Ethan and Vivian and make them suffer the same pain as I did. Seeing that my face didn't look right, Ethan quickly continued, "Come on, Luna. Since we're already here and Vivian and the others are all watching, could you please give me some face?" It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and a wisp of dark clouds had already gathered in the sky above the forest in the distance. I calmed down and took a bottle of mineral water and drank it all in one gulp. "I'm not angry. You're right. Since we're already here, we should naturally have a good time. If I made a fuss now, everything would change. If Ethan and Vivian didn't play anymore, wouldn't that be a pity? I'd like to see who would be swept away by the flood this time. Wow, this place is so photogenic. I must post it online and show it off." Not far away, Vivian was running towards the brook in the valley in a little white dress. She sat on a half-person-high river stone, put her fair and tender legs into the brook water, and kept splashing the water. A boy wearing glasses was holding a camera and constantly capturing Vivian's beautiful moments. Then he flatteringly showed the photos to Vivian. On the other side, Ethan and another boy started setting up tents and preparing food. According to Ethan, those two boys were both Vivian's suitors. Vivian had called them out to play together this time just to select the best one. I sat beside them bored and watched them work. Suddenly, Vivian pointed to the gentle riverbed beside her and said, "Brother Ethan, set up the tent here. Then we can play with the water conveniently as soon as we step out of the tent." In my previous life, I had reminded them that tents couldn't be set up by the river because it would be very dangerous if the water level rose suddenly. But Vivian laughed at me for scaremongering, and Ethan also told me not to frighten people. It was just a brook. It wasn't as exaggerated as I said. Later, When the water level rose suddenly, Vivian was reluctant to part with her valuables and pushed me down the riverbed, asking me to help her pick up things. Just a few seconds difference in time made it impossible for me to return to the shore. A group of people with no knowledge of wild survival dared to go camping in the primeval forest. I'll just wait and watch them court death. After the tents were set up, Vivian put her bags and cameras all inside, then changed into a swimsuit, revealing her curvaceous figure, and went into the water to play with the man who had just taken pictures of her. Ethan's eyes were almost popping out. He couldn't wait to jump into the water and play with her. Seizing this opportunity, I quickly took the ingredients from his hands. You go and play with them. Just leave this to me. Ethan clearly wanted to go into the water to play with Vivian very much, but for the sake of face, he still asked me first, Luna, don't you need to change clothes and play with us? I quickly shook my head. No, I'm not in good health. I'm afraid of catching a cold if I go into the water. I'll stay here and help. The flash flood is going to break out soon. If I go into the water with you at this time, isn't that just asking for death? Although the weather seemed sunny now, I knew it would change soon. Seeing that I insisted, Ethan didn't say anything more and hurriedly changed clothes and went into the water to find Vivian. Seeing that the remaining boy in the camp was so anxious, I said considerately, you can go too. There isn't much left to do. Just leave this to me. The boy exchanged a few polite words and then couldn't wait to find them. Now there was only me left in the camp. At this time, the dark clouds in the distance had joined together, and the temperature had dropped by several degrees. But it wasn't time yet. Everyone in the camp except me was playing and frolicking in the water. I took out my mobile phone and took a look. Sure enough, just like in my previous life, the signal was very poor. Even if I left alone at this time, I couldn't escape the range of the flash flood. Besides, I wanted to see with my own eyes what would happen to Ethan and Vivian. I simply dealt with the ingredients, selected some food, and put it into a bag. It would come in handy when waiting for rescue. Then I recalled everything in my previous life completely to make sure that I didn't need to prepare anything else. After that, I found a good angle and took pictures of the people in the water. No matter how innocent Vivian pretended to be, a girl playing with 3 boys in the water would make anyone think she was being flirtatious and two-faced. Meanwhile, the people playing and frolicking in the water also started talking about me. Ethan, this Luna is too fussy. It's such a rare chance to come out and play, but she won't even go into the water. I think Luna is quite nice. She's been busy helping out all by herself. Seeing that Vivian looked unhappy, that boy quickly changed his tune, but she's indeed a bit too fussy. Even if she just took off her shoes and felt the water a little bit, it would be okay. Facing the 2 boys' slander of me, Ethan didn't say a word for me, as if he hadn't heard it at all. The dark clouds in the distance became even darker. It was already 12 o'clock at noon. It was estimated that it had already started raining upstream. The flash flood would come in at most 1 hour. Ethan, I'm tired. Give me the car keys. I'll go and lie in the car for a while. Only to hear Vivian muttering, Luna, I'm not trying to criticize you, but this is such a fun place. Since you came here, you haven't even gone into the water. Now you still want to hide in the car. You're really a bit fussy. Seeing that the goddess was unhappy, the 2 boys also echoed each other and flattered Vivian while satirizing me. Vivian, don't bother with her. If she likes to be fussy, just let her be. Let's ignore her and have a good time. The most important thing is that you're happy. Yeah, Vivian, as long as you're having a good time. Some girls just like to make a fuss, thinking that everyone will spoil them like their parents. Just let her make a fuss. Let's see who will pay attention to her. I pretended to lower my head weakly. Hearing these words, Ethan felt that he had lost face. He picked up the car keys and threw them on the ground. Enough. Luna, I really regret bringing you out. Originally, everyone was having a great time, but you've completely ruined the atmosphere. It sounded as if I had begged them to bring me to this place. But it wasn't time to break off relations yet. I picked up the car keys from the ground. While they weren't paying attention, I took the food and water and went up to the road. From now on, no matter who came to ask me to get out of the car, I wouldn't leave. After a while, the people in the river were all tired from playing and started to come ashore to eat and drink. Previously, for the sake of excitement, Vivian had deliberately asked to bring 2 cases of beer, which were being chilled in the river. I saw her open a bottle of beer and then drink it all in one go. Only then did she say triumphantly, with beautiful scenery, delicious food and fine wine, we should really let loose today. Let's celebrate our upcoming college life. Hearing Vivian say this, Ethan and the others also drank a whole bottle of beer in one gulp and then started chatting. Vivian, don't forget to contact me when you go to college. Otherwise, I'll be sad. Vivian is so beautiful. She will definitely be elected as the campus belle when she goes to college. Thinking that I don't know how many more competitors I'll have, I feel so much pressure. That man deliberately sighed, which made Vivian laugh heartily. Vivian opened another bottle of beer and drank more than half of it in one go. Then she pretended to be modest and waved her hand. Oh, I'm not as good as you guys said. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be single until now. After saying that, she deliberately looked at Ethan and brother Ethan. Luna is your girlfriend after all. Shouldn't you call her down to eat something? You're just focusing on playing with us. Aren't you afraid that she'll quarrel with you when you go back? She emphasized the word girlfriend. Ethan helped her set up the food and tissues in front of her and then looked at Vivian affectionately and said, Luna is just my girlfriend in name. The girl I really like isn't her. If she quarrels with me, then we'll just break up. A boy patted Ethan on the shoulder and directly clinked glasses with him. Dude, you're amazing to be honest, your girlfriend is really far inferior to Vivian. She looks dull and fussy. Girls like this are not likable at all. Which boy can stand such a person? Another boy also said, yeah, originally, we finally came out to play today. Couldn't we just have a happy time? Luna doesn't do this or that, making it seem like we're trying to please her. To be honest, she really takes herself too seriously. I can't stand a girl like her at all. Vivian is better. She's both beautiful and has a generous personality. It's just that there are too few girls like Vivian. That's why Vivian is the goddess. Hearing these words, Vivian smiled even more brightly on her face, which made the 2 boys stare blankly. They also saw that Vivian didn't like me. In order to please Vivian, they kept putting me down even more. After hearing enough bad things about me and being satisfied, Vivian deliberately looked at Ethan. Oh, stop talking. After all, Luna is brother Ethan's girlfriend now. If you keep talking like this, brother Ethan will be unhappy. Ethan drank up the beer in his hand in one gulp and then threw the can aside. It's okay. I'll break up with her when I go back. In my heart, no one is as important as you. The atmosphere suddenly froze. Only then did the 2 sycophants realize that they had been used as assistants. Hiding in the car and listening to their words, I couldn't help sneering. With the new and old grudges combined, I could send them to their deaths without any psychological burden. Vivian and the others ate and drank heartily and then went into the water again. They even picked up water guns and started a water fight. A few minutes later, the brook water suddenly became muddy and many branches and fallen leaves floated down. So the several of them stood up straight in the water. Vivian was still fiddling with the water while complaining, why is the water suddenly so dirty? Brother Clark suddenly pointed to the upper reaches of the brook. Look. A large stream of muddy yellow water with more branches rushed down. Almost immediately, it reached their feet. Brother Clark and the other boy quickly walked towards the river bank in big strides. Ethan also quickly pulled Vivian. Vivian, let's go. Vivian stretched out her foot to step, then her body tilted and she directly hung on Ethan. Brother Ethan, I'm afraid to go. Seeing this, Ethan picked up Vivian and started wading through the water. Then Ethan suddenly fell to his knees. His knees were scratched and bleeding on the rocks. He quickly put Vivian down and shook his head. No, I've drunk too much. I'm not wearing shoes. I can't carry you and walk on these rocks. Seeing this, Vivian quickly helped Ethan and walked quickly across those rocks, and both of them grimaced in pain. The muddy water had already reached the edge of the tent. Vivian suddenly screamed, "My camera! I haven't got my bag yet." Brother Clark and the others quickly shouted, "Come up first. Don't worry about those things." "No, my bag is very expensive." After saying that, before Ethan could react, Vivian left his side and quickly got into the tent to pick up her bag and camera. By the time she came out of the tent, the water had already reached their knees in an instant. Vivian lost her balance and the bag and camera in her hands disappeared into the flood. At this moment, she directly grabbed Ethan's arm tightly and didn't dare to move another step. Brother Clark and the others immediately found a long branch and handed it to Ethan, but the water flow was too fast at this time. Ethan could only ensure that he wouldn't be swept away, but he couldn't move another step. "Luna, come and help pull them up quickly." "Ah, I'm coming, I'm coming." I pretended to be awakened suddenly and rushed down to the river beach in a hurry. But I stood at the back and only grasped the very tip of the branch. Vivian was almost driven mad by fear. At this time, she didn't mention her bag anymore. She desperately urged, "Pull hard, quickly pull us up." Brother Clark and I leaned back, pulling Ethan and Vivian step by step. Then I deliberately let go of my hand, pretending that I had no strength left, and sat down heavily on the ground with a thud. Seeing this, Vivian couldn't help shouting abuse. "Luna, you idiot! Didn't you eat or something?" I said in a sobbing voice, feeling embarrassed, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." Ethan could hardly hold himself up in the water anymore. He groaned and told Vivian, "Vivian, don't move around. Be careful not to be swept away by the water." Vivian immediately stood up straight and closely followed behind Ethan. I got up from the ground again, grasped the branch, but still just pretended to be pulling. Just when Ethan was trying to take a big step forward with Vivian, with a crack sound, the branch couldn't bear the speed of the water flow and started to break in the middle. Vivian was startled at the sight. She was almost crazy and didn't care about her goddess image anymore. Her face was smeared with snot and tears. "What should we do? What should we do? We're going to die." Ethan directly stretched out his hand and grasped the broken part of the branch and then shouted loudly, "Vivian, quickly grab me and then move up." Vivian tentatively grasped the branch, but the rocks under her feet must have been impacted by the water flow. Her body was swayed by the water and then she tightly hugged Ethan's arm again. "No, I'll be swept away." Ethan could only barely hold his body in place and then he told Vivian, "Vivian, grab the branch. I'll give you a push later. You go up first, and then I'll go up. Otherwise, both of us will drown here." At this time, the flood had already reached their thighs. Vivian nodded, "Okay, brother Ethan. I'll pull you up as soon as I get up there." Vivian grasped the branch with one hand and Ethan's wrist with the other. Then when Ethan was about to push Vivian onto the bank, a wave hit, bringing a sharp branch that slid heavily across Vivian's face. Ah, it hurt so much. Vivian subconsciously wanted to cover her face with her hands, but she didn't dare to move again and could only close her eyes. Seeing this, Ethan pushed Vivian onto the bank. Vivian crawled onto the river bank like a drenched rat and kept gasping for breath. And the water flow instantly became even stronger. Ethan's body was swayed by the water and in an instant, a large amount of floodwater rushed onto his face. Then the water level had already reached above his waist. Brother Clark and the other boy couldn't pull Ethan at all and could only shout at Vivian, "Vivian, come and help pull Ethan up quickly." Looking at the surging flood, Vivian shrank back twice and suddenly shouted loudly, "No, I won't. I want to go home quickly. The water is too strong. It will sweep us all away." After saying that, she stumbled and crawled towards the road. Ethan's face changed. Before he could say anything, the next moment, he was swept away by the water and then disappeared into the flood. "Oh no! Oh no! There's been a death." Brother Clark and the other boy sat limply on the roadside with pale faces. I quickly reminded them, "Call the police quickly. Maybe with timely rescue, Ethan can still be saved." If I didn't remind them to call the police, I could hardly hold back my laughter. Then I walked quickly onto the road in big strides, squatted in an open area, quietly buried my head in my knees, and curved the corners of my mouth. There was a cut on Vivian's face made by the branch. But with Ethan being swept away by the water, her two sycophants now didn't have the mood to comfort the goddess. Vivian could only hold a tissue in a panic and put it on her face to stop the bleeding. Just when everyone was waiting for the rescue, suddenly, some small stones began to roll down to the roadside. Here it comes. There's a landslide. I watched helplessly as Brother Clark and the others hadn't reacted yet. Then a stone bigger than a head smashed onto the windshield. Then the pile of stones immediately rushed down along the water flow, carrying big trees and mud, and submerged another car. When the mudslide came down, Brother Clark and Vivian, still in shock, quickly ran away and then looked at the wrecked car. Brother Clark couldn't hold back anymore. He went up and pointed at Vivian viciously and cursed, "It's all your fault. You insisted on coming camping. Now there's been a death, not to mention that my car has been destroyed. My father will beat me to death." Vivian sat on the ground and didn't dare to say anything anymore. She was still wearing a swimsuit, covered with mud and dirt now, looking extremely wretched. At this moment, Vivian suddenly looked at me resentfully. "Luna, when I said I wanted to go camping before, you said it was very dangerous here. Why couldn't you stop us at that time?" I rubbed my aching knees and stood up and directly slapped Vivian. "Vivian, are you crazy? I said it was very dangerous in this no man's land. Did you listen to me? My boyfriend was killed by you. We might all lose our lives now. How dare you blame me? If you hadn't insisted on coming here, Ethan wouldn't have died, and we wouldn't have encountered these things." After saying that, I took the opportunity to slap Vivian hard again. Vivian came to her senses, covered her red cheeks, and suddenly rushed towards me with her hair disheveled. "Luna, how dare you hit me? You bitch. I'll kill you." Vivian was smaller than me. When she fought with me, she had no advantage at all. Instead, I took the opportunity to hit her several more times. The other boy couldn't bear to watch it anymore and came up to forcibly separate us. "Enough? Everyone calm down. Is this the time to quarrel? The police will be here soon. Maybe Ethan can still be saved." However, his voice became lower and lower. By the end of his words, he didn't even have the confidence himself. Vivian thought that Brother Clark had turned against her, but there was still one sycophant who could help her. Hearing this, she made an even bigger fuss. "Luna dared to hit me. No, I must get even." Seeing that she was still pestering, the boy directly pushed Vivian away. "Vivian, that's enough. What Luna said is also right. You were the one who wanted to go camping. Now that it's like this, why are you blaming her? Do you want another death before you're satisfied?" The boy became more and more angry as he spoke, and then said viciously, "I really regret it. You slut. You and Ethan didn't want to break through that layer of relationship and just kept me hanging. Now that there's been a death, maybe there will be a record in my file. If I had known earlier, I would never have paid attention to you, this two-faced bitch. You've almost ruined me." Before Vivian could react, the boy suddenly said vindicatively, "Luna, I just saw Vivian and Ethan kissing. Don't be too sad." Under the threat of danger, the two sycophants showed their ugly sides, scaring Vivian so much that she didn't dare to say another word. Then, we silently squatted by the roadside, keeping watch for landslides while continuing to wait for the rescue. Just as I had said, in such a remote wilderness, by the time the police and the rescue team arrived, it was almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At this time, the water level had dropped and the water flow had become much calmer. When Brother Clark's car was dug out by the excavator, he and Vivian started quarreling again. Later, Vivian was sent to the hospital for treatment. Since there had been a death, I also had to go to the police station to give a statement. But with Brother Clark and the others testifying that this camping trip was initiated by Vivian and it was purely a natural disaster, it naturally had nothing to do with me. When I walked out of the police station and saw my parents waiting for me, I couldn't help but rush towards them. My mother's legs were so weak from fright. Seeing that I was okay, she kept putting her hands together. "May the Bodhisattva bless, may our ancestors bless, may God bless. Luna, If something had happened to you, Mom wouldn't be able to live on. My father directly said, "Bah, bah, bah. What are you talking about? Our daughter survived a disaster. There must be good fortune waiting for her in the future." I couldn't help feeling a pang in my nose. Suddenly, a group of people stopped us. "It was you who killed my son Ethan, right? My son is missing. Why should your daughter be able to come back alive?" After saying that, a middle-aged woman with a fierce look rushed towards me. Then she was pushed aside by my father with one hand and was stopped by the police. My parents hurriedly protected me and walked out. I looked back and saw that Brother Clark and the other boy on the other side had already been punched several times by that group of people. It seemed that these were Ethan's family members. But they deserved it. If the two of them hadn't flattered Vivian, they wouldn't have suffered this unexpected disaster. One day later, news came from the rescue team that Ethan had been found. Vivian was lucky. The branch only scratched her face and didn't hurt other parts of her body. Ethan wasn't so lucky. He was swept downstream by the water. Although he survived, his spine was seriously injured and he would have to sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. At this time, Ethan's family hired a lawyer and sued the four of us, including me, Vivian, and Brother Clark, in court, demanding that we compensate for his medical expenses, mental damage fees and other costs. 5 people went camping and almost all died. This incident quickly caused a huge stir on the internet. I simply contacted Brother Clark and the other boy and started a live stream together, releasing Vivian's chat records. When it came to their own interests, the so-called goddess was useless at this time. Brother Clark and the other boy cooperated with my live stream exceptionally well. Their chat records could prove that this camping activity was initiated by Vivian alone, and my chat records also proved that I didn't know we were going camping beforehand and that it was Ethan who took me to Yulong Mountain on his own initiative. The photo of Vivian playing with the 3 boys was also released by me as evidence. This had nothing to do with me at all. The comments about me on the internet were completely reversed compared to my previous life. Such a safety-conscious young lady was almost implicated. Sure enough, we should stay away from men. The scumbag already had a girlfriend but was still so intimate with that woman. And those 2 sycophants might as well just get married on the spot. Those 2 sycophants almost lost their lives while flattering. It's so hilarious. The last comment was mocking Brother Clark and the other boy. Then Vivian's online posts were also dug out. It turned out that the photos she took in the valley of Yulong Mountain had been posted online when she took a break. The caption was, "A wonderful recommendation. It's a great place for taking pictures, escaping the heat and playing with water." Immediately after that were the intimate photos of her kissing Ethan secretly. Under that photo, there were netizens' comments, "It's the first time I've seen someone get retribution right after cheating." Taking advantage of this popularity, I quickly started live streaming with goods and also gained a group of regular fans, opening a new peak in my career. Finally, in the compensation lawsuit with Ethan, my responsibility was the smallest. I only needed to pay Ethan a few thousand yuan out of humanitarianism. As for Vivian, she had to compensate Ethan hundreds of thousands of yuan for medical expenses, and Brother Clark and the other boy each had to compensate Ethan more than 100,000 yuan. I quickly paid the money and completely disengaged myself from this matter, and then watched them fight among themselves. I was very satisfied with this result. In this life, it was Ethan who was swept away by the flood, and it was I who achieved success in my career. As the saying goes, what goes around comes around. At this time, Ethan started to contact me. He wanted to see me. When I saw Ethan in the hospital, the caregiver was pinching his nose to clean up his excrement and urine. A hint of embarrassment flashed across his face, and then he forced himself to cheer up and looked at me. "Luna, you're here?" I pulled over a chair and sat down. "Yes, I'm here. What do you want to say?" Ethan forced a smile. "Luna, I'm sorry. I always thought that I loved Vivian before. Actually, it was only today that I realized that it was you I loved, Luna. Can we start over?" I smiled and then went up and pulled Ethan's quilt open. Sure enough, I saw a fruit knife hidden in Ethan's hand. Ethan, let me guess. Did you want to make me moved and soften my heart, and then kill me when I got close to you? Do you think I'll give you another chance to hurt me? Having his inner thoughts exposed by me, Ethan couldn't help but pick up the fruit knife and wave it around. But I only needed to take a step back, and he couldn't even touch the corner of my clothes. Luna, you bitch. It should have been you who was swept away by the water. I should be the one becoming an online celebrity. Why didn't you warn me? It's all your fault that I'm in such a state today. I didn't expect Ethan to be reincarnated too, but this just made it convenient for me to settle accounts with him. I snorted coldly, grabbed a glass of water and threw it at Ethan's face. Ethan, you're the bitch. You liked Vivian. Why did you drag me into it? Was it me who asked you to go camping? Was it me who didn't let you leave? I was killed by you in my previous life. Do you still want to put the blame on me? Knowing that Ethan was also reincarnated, I simply seized his weaknesses and trampled on them hard. You're in this situation today, which just proves that God is fair. This is your retribution. You were two-timing, harmed me and even took advantage of me to gain popularity and make money from my misfortune. You deserve what you have today. The money you and Vivian earned as online celebrities in the previous life now belongs to me. My popularity is even higher than yours back then. Just envy and be jealous. Ethan struggled to hit me, but accidentally rolled down from the hospital bed and couldn't even get up. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I gave him a hard kick and then left the bedside. From now on, his life should be a complete mess. A few months later, I bought a new house for my parents. I also got my driver's license and bought a car for myself, and then started my college life. It was also at this time that Ethan dropped out of school directly and followed Vivian to her university. I heard that Ethan didn't want Vivian's compensation, but demanded that Vivian couldn't break up with him. Vivian's family then forced her to agree to stay with Ethan. He also tried to team up with Vivian to start live streaming and replicate their online celebrity path from their previous life. However, every time they went online, all they got was ridicule. Vivian was called Miss Photo Op, and Ethan was called Paralyzed Bro. There was some traffic, but it was all people laughing at them, and it hardly brought in much income at all. Ethan and Vivian endured it for a few months. In the end, they still couldn't bear having salt constantly rubbed into their wounds and not being able to make money, so they canceled their accounts. Half a month later, just as I was coming out of a hotel after having dinner with a business partner, I happened to see Vivian leaning against a pot-bellied man. Then they took the room key and got into the elevator. Luna, what are you looking at? I came to my senses and shook my head. After the injury on Vivian's face healed, there was no scar left. It seemed that with her youth and beauty, she quickly found a new sugar daddy. Although he wasn't as good looking as Ethan, obviously the man was extremely wealthy. As for Ethan, after being paralyzed, his appearance was damaged and he needed someone to take care of him for eating, drinking, and using the toilet. His life had been ruined, but Vivian hadn't been affected at all. I was very curious. Could the loving couple from the previous life still continue to be affectionate? However, it had nothing to do with me. I was busy with my studies and managing my online account at the same time. I was so busy every day that naturally I wouldn't pay attention to these two insignificant people. At the high school reunion a year later, when I showed up in front of my old classmates, a look of disbelief flashed in the eyes of many of them. I had originally wanted to show off in front of Ethan, but after looking around several times, I didn't see where he was, so I started asking my classmates about him. The classmate sitting next to me said in disbelief, "Don't you know? Ethan is in prison and he's waiting for the death sentence to be carried out." Ah! I almost spilled the fruit juice in my hand. I quickly continued to inquire. Then I learned that after Vivian started dating that wealthy man, she broke up with Ethan and sent him back to his hometown. The adults from both of their families also became enemies. On the second day after Vivian returned home for the spring festival, Ethan pushed his wheelchair and knocked on Vivian's door. Vivian wasn't on guard. As soon as she opened the door, she was grabbed by Ethan, and then he stabbed her in the stomach more than 10 times. Before the ambulance could arrive at her residential community, her body had already gone cold. Ethan threatened Vivian's parents with a knife, warning them not to approach him, but Vivian's father took the opportunity to kick his wheelchair down the stairwell, and then Ethan was arrested. The criminal facts were clear and his actions were heinous, so Ethan was sentenced to death. I couldn't help shrinking my neck. Both Ethan and Vivian were selfish people. That things had turned out like this was also a case of character determining fate. After the reunion, I drove home. Looking at the colorful street lights on the roadside, it was just like my brilliant life in the future.